Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Brendan.
I would first like to start off by saying thank you to Chief for the kind opening remarks, Patch and Robbie for reading two of my favorite quotes, and the Camper Choir for singing a great rendition of Let It Be, and especially Mode McDonald and Dodger Oscillator who really helped me through the writing process of this speech. So my story begins in the middle of Crescent Lake 4 years ago in 2011. I was a 12-year-old camper in my 4th summer at Agawam. This memory on Crescent Lake is certainly not my favorite, and definitely not the most fun time that I've had down at the Agawam waterfront. I'm standing on the edge of the centerboard of my capsized sailboat with the wind ripping and dark and gusty water all around me. I use all of my weight to try to pull the boat back over, but it continues to tip until it turtles and I am helplessly thrown into the cold water. I'm now completely out of control of the boat I was once skippering and am rattled with fear from the incredibly high winds. The summer previous, in my 11-year-old summer, I had dedicated a large portion of my time to sailing and was able to proudly achieve my skipper award by the end of the summer. Because of this, I felt an obligation to step up and begin skippering, or steering and controlling the boat, in racing sailing specialty during the upcoming season. Therefore, on the first day of specialty, I begged the sailing staff to allow me to start skippering during our racing practices. Despite having crewed in many races before, I had no experience in the far more difficult role of skippering. So from day one, I was anxiously in control of a 15-foot sailboat with only the help of a crew. This was made even more challenging due to the fact that it was easily the summer with the highest winds that I've ever seen on Crescent Lake in my 8 years at Agawam. As an about 90-pound 12-year-old, I had an incredibly difficult time handling a boat in such powerful winds. After my first few days on the water, I had lost control of the boat and capsized or turtled multiple times. Throughout the rest of that half of the summer, I was extremely scared of going to specialty each day if the winds were high. I can remember waking up in my cabin Wesleyan in the morning, looking out the window at the leaves and the trees being blown by the strong wind, and feeling completely sick with nerves about trying to take on the difficult weather conditions. I still loved sailing in camp, but it had become more stressful for me under the pressure of taking the next step in racing sailing. I knew that I could very easily return to crewing and give up my hopes to skipper for that summer, but refused to accept that as a solution. My older brother and role model was a 15-year-old sailing woodcrafter that summer, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps as a racing skipper. Part of me wanted to be strong and keep trying, and part of me wanted to be weak and give up. Instead of switching specialties as an easy cop-out, I decided that the only way to overcome this fear was by simply forcing myself to tough it out each day. I was still the worst and most inexperienced skipper on the team. I was still absolutely terrified of capsizing a boat in high winds, and I still had thoughts of giving up on skippering. But each day, I knew that the only answer was just to tough it out and do whatever my best effort could be. The judgment day finally came when I was told that I would be skippering in my first ever real race during an Agawam Cup regatta on a Friday about halfway through the summer. Although I was slightly terrified about doing so, I knew that this is what all the practicing was building up to. This is where I could prove my abilities and gain confidence. On that day, I was able to finish with 2 first places in both of the races that I sailed with the help of my crew, and I left the water feeling prouder than any other of my camp accomplishments to date. The greatest success I experienced on that day was when I finally realized what it felt like to see my perseverance through fear pay off. And I carried this confidence with me for the rest of my time sailing that summer and the years following. Ever since that successful day on the water, my fear of high wind changed to a feeling of thrill while sailing in these conditions. Now, instead of feeling scared each morning when I see the high wind blowing the tree branches outside the window of my cabin, I get excited to go sail that day. It was difficult to take my sailing skills and responsibilities to the next level, but I am incredibly happy that I did. Although I still get nervous before other important regattas in my time as a camper, I found my true passion that summer. It was not easy to find that passion, and I had many thoughts about giving up on it, but I did so by doing my best to just breeze through the frightful winds each racing sailing specialty period of that summer. At camp, there are many new activities and goals that may seem completely scary to reach for. It is okay to be afraid. What is more important is to not give up on something you care about just because of that fear. The only answer may be to tough it out through the fear each day, which I have seen is far from easy. However, remember for this summer, the rest of your summers at Agawam, and outside of Camp 2, that success may not come easily, but it will eventually come in some form, as long as you continue to persevere through the fear that separates you from your goals. Thank you.